Kerry Gregory. I am the owner and founder of Gemmology Rocks. I've been in the jewellery industry just over 20 years. I'm a gemmologist and I teach and develop educational courses for the industry and support for the industry.
Kerry, can you tell me how long you've been in the trade and how you got into the trade initially?
I've been in the trade for just over 21 years now, I think it is. It's all sort of blurring into one and you forget. I got into the trade originally completely by accident. I was running a pub when I was 19, 20 years of age, and I just got sick of it and I wanted to do something else. And so I accidentally fell into working in jewellery and totally fell in love with it.
And what did you do? What was your first job in the trade?
My first job in the trade was working in a small retail jewellers in Newport in South Wales, very, very traditional family-run jewellers.
Amazing. Okay, so as a woman starting off 20 years ago, did you initially face any difficulties?
Yeah, like when I started, I really did, mainly because the guy that I worked for was fairly misogynistic and sexist, and it was very much, you know, his way or no way. And a lot of the women who I worked with were older women who wouldn't challenge that sort of attitude. And one of the reasons why I ended up leaving there is because he unfairly dismissed me because I challenged him.
On the things that he was saying because you're a woman, essentially?
It wasn't ever really sort of obvious that it was because I was a woman, but it was very clear to all of us working there. There was 5 women working there and 1 guy working there. And all of us just knew, and we would often talk about it. You know, if we went for a drink in the pub afterwards, it would always be, oh, well, you know what it's like, you know what he's like with women. And that's what it was like. Yeah. So it was just known, you know, and there was, I think there was a time where I was up for promotion and there was me and the other guy, and he was just like the laziest person you've ever met in your life. And I was doing really well, I was working really hard. And the reason why my boss told me I didn't get the job was because my skirt was too short and too tight. And he would regularly tell me that I needed to lose weight, and all sorts of things like that. That was kind of, it was definitely directed at me because I was a woman. I was a little bit chubby. I mean, you know, I'm still chubby now. I'm probably chubbier than I was, but a lot of it definitely was because I was female. Absolutely. And I really don't think that was me having a chip on my shoulder, because I don't think that I'm one of those people. I'm definitely completely the other way now, that I don't worry about whether someone is treating me in some way because I'm a woman. I kind of feel that that's their problem and I just get on and do what I want to do. But I was a different person 20 odd years ago.
Okay, so from that, what did you go into afterwards? So you stuck with the jewellery trade, even though you've kind of had these bad experiences first off. What did you go into afterwards, and did you face any more kind of backlash?
Yeah, I did stick with the jewellery trade because I loved it. So after that, I was out of work for a little while, which was a real issue for me. I got into debt because I didn't have a job, etc. But I then went to work for somebody else in Cardiff, absolutely brilliant guy who I absolutely adore. And actually, I mean, I adore him for a number of different reasons. We just had a falling out. So I moved to Cardiff. I went to work for another family-run jewellers, slightly bigger jewellers. I worked there for 6 years. And there was always the odd everyday sexism thing. So our workshop were all men, and they were a little bit sexist about some things, but also equally really progressive in other things as well. And sometimes a lot of the sexism was actually a joke. And so they didn't really mean it, but I think sometimes that's the stuff that's actually a little bit more powerful and a little bit more insidious. It's this everyday that actually it's okay to joke about these things, that when it's not you, it feels okay and it feels funny. But when it is you, and a joke being about, oh, well, you need to do the washing up because you're a woman, like that's our life. That's what we live and that's what we do all of the time. And so it isn't funny, even though they don't mean any harm with it. But I think probably since then, I've had little impact because I'm a woman, but I think that might be more because I just don't take it, rather than that it doesn't come my way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I can see that if you were, you know, if you didn't say anything or if you didn't do anything, and some guys, they just don't know, you know, they see it as a joke and it's just a bit subtle and it's, you know, it's harmful. But yeah, so I guess, I mean, at the time of being in the workshop, did you kind of confront any of the guys, and did they ever sort of say, oh, actually, and stop, you know, and stop with the jokes?
Yeah, I mean, we'd bring it up, we'd confront them, but it doesn't feel as confrontational as confronting them, if that makes
Right.
sense. You know, we would
Yeah.
talk about it and we might say, do you know what, I don't like that, or what have you. I was very good friends with the goldsmith's wife, and so it kind of became a joke our side as well. And so we would kind of jokingly gang up on him and take the mickey out of his old-fashioned attitudes and things like that. I mean, the goldsmith was, I think, probably 14, 15 years older than me. He's still one of my best mates to this day. And his wife is still one of my best mates to this day. And his wife was, she's exactly the same age as me. And so we would just do that. We would just kind of gang up on him and make it and point out how ridiculous he was being. That
Yeah.
you know, this is probably wasn't even the 21st century then. Where are we? Yeah, probably about the 21st century. Probably was just about the 21st century, you know, and sort of going, do you know what? We don't live in Victorian times. You're ridiculous. And make him a caricature of himself, really.
Yeah. Okay. So fast forward to now, obviously you're owning your own business. So, you know, you are essentially the boss. But do you think that the world has changed now for women in our industry?
Yeah, I think it has changed an awful lot. I do see a lot of women in our industry in really influential roles, a lot of very visible women who are, you know, they're strong, they're powerful, they're charting their own path. So you've got, you know, Harriet Kelsall, who's chair of the NAJ. You've got Nisa, who is head of education at GEMA. You know, there's women in our assay offices, and all of those sorts of things. And I think, yeah, absolutely, it's easier for women now. It still hasn't got to the point where we need it to be, probably, but I think that's the same for a lot of people in our industry, a lot of demographics in our industry. I still sometimes joke now that the jewellery industry is still a little bit of an old boys network, and it still is a little bit, but it's nowhere near, from my experience, the way that it was 20 years ago. And I think some of it is that, you know, women need to stick together. We need to make sure that we're supporting each other, and we need to make sure that we're not sabotaging each other, and actually we're building each other up. We're not trying to climb over each other to get places. And I think women have as much of a role of furthering ourselves and furthering our careers in the industry as men do.
Definitely. And that kind of rolls into my next question. What advice would you give to either someone starting off in the jewellery trade, or even someone that's been in the jewellery trade a long time that could possibly still be facing these old-fashioned jokes? You know, what advice would you give them starting off or in the trade?
The advice that I would give somebody starting off in the trade, or somebody who's been in the trade a long time who are finding these issues where they've got everyday sexism or whatever, is to try and talk about it in a way that they feel comfortable with. There's absolutely no point them pushing themselves well out of their comfort zone and doing something that they feel really uncomfortable with, feeling that they feel threatened with, but find other women to talk to in the first instance, talk about those problems, find men to talk to and talk about those things, and maybe find ways that you can deal with this. It doesn't feel too confrontational to you, doesn't feel like you're putting yourself at risk or that you're doing something too much, because you have to do it your way. I can't tell you how I've done it and you do what I've done, because it's got to be comfortable to you. It's got to be the way that you do it. But I do think that, you know, for yourself, you need to do these things, and you need to kind of just question those things, and you need to just sort of, sometimes it's just going, do you know what, that's not okay, that's not appropriate, I don't like that. And it's sometimes those sort of softer things where you go, do you know what, that's not okay, I know you think that's funny, but it's not funny. But also I feel that we kind of need to do that for everybody who comes behind us. And it's all very well going, oh, well, when I started out in the industry, we had this and we had that and we had the other, but that doesn't help us. That doesn't help the next generation. I think whatever we do now, we have to be, you know, paving the way for the future generation and making sure that we're telling the people who aren't doing something that's okay now that it's not okay, so the next person who comes along doesn't have to put up with that.
Exactly. That's amazing. Okay. Well, Kerry, thank you so much.
No problem. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, good luck with everything that's going on. I know that you've been extremely busy. I've seen a lot of your videos online. And there's a lot of people talking about you. I mean, pretty much every day I see a post of someone that's received a pack or a parcel from you or something, and they're posting it up online. So whatever you're doing seems to be really working. And yeah, you were kind of one of the first people that came to mind when I wanted to do this interview series, that, you know, you are leading the way for the next generation of young females and showing them how they can do it, essentially. So
Thank you.
yeah,
That really, really means an awful lot to me because, you know, it takes a huge amount of work to do all of
yeah.
that stuff. And it's nice that it makes an impact on people. It's nice that
Mm.
it's being seen in a positive light because, you know, sometimes you're just slogging away and you're like, oh my God, is this actually working? But I do feel like it's working. I do feel like we've got a really good vision for this year. We know what we're doing, and I'm really positive for the future.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, thank you so much.
No
Appreciate it.
problem.
Okay, we'll cut it there.